Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I was back stateside barely a week when the party kicked off at the ranch. My Uncle Rick was retiring, and the whole damn family was treating it like the 4th of July rolled into Thanksgiving. Smoke from the grill curled up into the late afternoon sky, and someone had dragged a Bluetooth speaker out by the horse trough. Country music, cheap beer, paper plates piled high with brisket and beans. It felt like home, but off. Out past the folding tables and beer coolers, I spotted Aunt Trudy sitting near the garden shed in a faded lawn chair, half hidden in the shadow of the lemon tree. Her hands were folded in her lap, sunglasses on, not really talking to anyone. People would pass by and wave, say hi, but no one lingered. She just sat there, still and quiet, like a painting someone forgot to hang up. My name's Dylan. I'm 29, live out near El Paso, and just got back from my 3rd deployment in the Army Reserves. Grew up right here on this ranch, well, technically my grandparents' place, but everyone always called it Uncle Rick's after Granddad died, even though it was Trudy who kept the bills paid and animals fed through all of it. Rick just showed up loud. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Inside the kitchen, I was at the island icing cupcakes for the kids' table. Rick was holding court just outside the screen door, holding a beer and slapping shoulders. His laugh was huge and ugly. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop, but the way he said it, like it didn't matter who heard, made my stomach twist. He said to our cousin Eric, she ought to just sign the place over already. Trudy's done using it. I stopped mid-swipe, the spatula dripping frosting onto the counter. Did I hear that right? I peeked out the window. Aunt Trudy was still sitting by the shed, her face blank, smile frozen in place like she'd been caught mid-blink. If she heard it, she didn't show it. My pulse kicked up. That wasn't the first off thing I'd heard about Rick and the ranch. A few cousins had said stuff over the years, jokes that didn't feel like jokes, tension in phone calls, papers getting lost. I'd ignored it before, chalked it up to family politics. But this time, I didn't laugh it off. I didn't brush it aside. This time, I paid attention. I finished icing the last cupcake, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and grabbed a slice of the pecan pie someone brought over from Jessie Mae's bakery. The sun was sinking low behind the barn, casting long shadows over the yard. Trudy was still sitting by herself, looking like she hadn't moved in hours. I walked over slow, balancing the plate and fork, trying to act normal. Figured you might want something sweet, I said, crouching next to her chair. She smiled, tired but polite. That was nice of you, hun. I helped her shift so she could take the plate, bracing her back with one hand. The second she leaned, she winced. What was that? I asked. It's nothing. She shook her head, brushing it off, but her sleeve slid back just enough to show the edge of a yellow bruise on her forearm. I stared at it. She saw me looking. I hid it on the pantry door, she said quickly, reaching for the molasses. She always was a bad liar. I didn't say anything, just waited. Her fingers tightened around the fork. Then, soft as a whisper, she added, he just gets overwhelmed sometimes. I shouldn't push him, I nodded once. Slow. Is he pressuring you to sign anything? Her fork paused mid-air. She didn't look at me. There's a draft, she finally said, of a transfer. Just in case something happens to me. Where is it? She pointed with her chin toward the back of the property. Office trailer, locked, but the keys are on the nail in the barn, like always. The sun dipped lower. Rick's voice boomed from across the yard, laughing like someone who'd never had to earn a single thing he owned. I leaned in. Has he ever laid hands on you before? She looked down at her lap. No, not really. Just last week, he grabbed my arm. I didn't want to talk about the paperwork that night. And he pushed it anyway? He said he was tired of waiting. That it's all gonna be his. Eventually, I stood up, jaw tight. Don't sign a damn thing. I haven't, she said quickly. I'm not stupid. I nodded, then turned toward the trailer without another word. That night, after the cornhole boards came out and the fire pit crowd got loud with whiskey and smoke, I slipped away. Everyone was too busy talking about Rick's glory days to notice me heading around the side of the barn. The keys were still hanging there, rusted and familiar. I grabbed them, walked across the gravel in the dark, and let myself into the office trailer. It still smelled like printer ink and stale coffee. Same plastic chairs, same cracked window from the hailstorm 2 summers back. The filing cabinet was marked Land/Estate, I opened the second drawer and flipped through the folders until I found it. Manila, with her name written across the tab in Sharpie. Inside was a typed property transfer, her name listed as Grantor Rick, listed as grantee. Unsigned, but the date was recent, less than a month ago. There were sticky notes on the side. Get notarized? Add mineral rights? One in his sloppy handwriting said, Trudy needs to stop dragging feet. I took out my phone and snapped photos of every page. Got the envelope too, just in case. Then I locked the place back up and returned the keys to the nail like I was never there. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat on the old porch swing out front, waiting for the fire to die down. At midnight, I sent the files to my friend Mia over at County Aging Services. She'd helped with a case I flagged once for a buddy. She knew how to move quiet and quick. Then I texted Benally, an old friend from high school who made deputy 5 years back. Dylan, got something bad brewing at the ranch? Gonna need you soon. Keep it off the books for now. Benally, copy that. What are we dealing with? Dylan, elder coercion, property transfer, bruises. Benally, you have proof? Dylan, I will. Phone buzzed again. Benally said to call him in the morning. Mia gave me a Dropbox link to upload everything. I sat there under the porch light, uploading photos one by one, while Uncle Rick shouted country lyrics out back like he owned the damn stars. By the time the sky started to shift from black to that hazy blue, I was already making coffee. No one else was up yet, not after the amount of bourbon they tore through. But I knew Trudy would be. She always got up early, no matter how little sleep she'd had. I brought 2 mugs out to the back patio. She was already there, wrapped in a faded quilt, just staring out at the fields like they might talk back. I handed her a cup, then sat across from her. No small talk. I need to ask you a few things, I said. She gave me a look, tired and wary. Dylan, you don't need to. I do, I cut in. Just tell me what happened last week. She didn't answer at first, just cradled the mug in her hands and looked down into the steam like it had answers I didn't. He grabbed me, she finally said. Right here. She rolled her sleeve up slowly, like she was ashamed of it. The bruise was worse than it looked last night. Not just yellow now, there were deep purple shadows under the skin, oval-shaped, like fingers. I pulled my phone out and clicked the camera open. I'm gonna take pictures. Okay? She didn't speak, just nodded once, eyes still fixed on the ground. I took 3 angles, made sure to get her face in one, then stepped back. Where exactly were you when it happened? I asked. The kitchen, she said. I was chopping onions. He came in asking if I'd looked over the papers again. I said no. He told me I was dragging my feet. I told him I wasn't ready, and he just grabbed my arm. Hard time? Late afternoon. Sun was still up. I don't know the exact time. I jotted it down in my notes. Then I had her point out exactly where it happened, where she was standing, where he came from. I took pictures of the layout too. Inside, I uploaded everything to Mia's Dropbox and shot an email over to Benally. Subject, elder coercion documentation, attachments, photos, 5, statement notes, location markers. I sent it, then opened Trudy's phone. I need to check your texts. Anything from him about the documents? She handed it over without a word. No password. I scrolled through the messages and didn't have to dig far. Rick, don't forget the papers. Rick, let's not drag this out, Trudy. I've been patient. Rick, you don't want this to get messy. I screenshotted everyone. Time-stamped, with his contact name visible. Backed them up to the folder. That all of it? I asked. She hesitated, then pulled open a drawer in the kitchen buffet. Inside was an old folder with her initials on it. I flipped it open. Property tax receipts, medical bills, and a single sheet of lined paper folded in half, her handwriting. I started writing down what he said, she said. Just little things. When he'd get angry, I took photos of that too. Her words were shaky, full of crossed-out lines and notes in the margins. Stuff like, said I owe him everything and called me a squatter on his land. We sat back down on the porch. I could feel the weight of it pressing into my chest. This wasn't just family tension. This was calculated, ongoing. He's been talking like it's already his, she said quietly. Says it in front of people, makes little jabs. You ever tell anybody? No one listens when it's just me. I looked at her. They're listening now. She gave a weak smile, but her eyes were still cloudy. Then she said something I hadn't heard before. There's a clause in the will, she said. Dad put it there after his second stroke, said it would stop us from tearing each other apart over land. What kind of clause? If anyone challenges the way the assets were divided, they lose their share. Period, I raised my eyebrows. That's real? It should be, she said. But Rick's been hinting that it doesn't apply anymore, that Dad was too old to make legal sense by the end. I got on the phone with the law office that handled my grandfather's estate. Took a few tries to get someone on the line, but eventually I reached a paralegal named Brent, who agreed to pull the file. Yep, it's there, he said after a pause. Standard no contest clause. Fully enforceable unless someone can prove coercion or mental incompetence. I looked at Trudy. You're protected. That clause is real, and if Rick pushes it, he's the one risking his cut, not you. She sat a little straighter in her chair. So what do we do now? I stared out at the pasture. The cattle hadn't been fed yet. Rick was probably still passed out in his recliner. Now? I said. We finish what he started. I stood up from the porch, dusted off my jeans, and looked at Trudy. Let's go into town, I said. Get groceries or something. You could use a break. She squinted at me like she knew there was more to it. Rick's still asleep. All the better. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Let me get my purse. We moved fast but quiet. I told her to grab her meds, wallet, any clothes she liked. I took an old duffel from the hall closet and went through the bedroom. Got her favorite framed photo of Grandma from the dresser, the rosary off the headboard, and a handful of family pictures from the hallway wall. Can't carry much, I said. Just what matters. Trudy kept glancing toward the front of the house like he might burst in at any second. You sure about this? She whispered. I zipped the bag. I'm sure you're not staying here one more night. We backed out the driveway quiet, no dust trail, windows down. Once we hit the main road, she let out a shaky breath like she'd been holding it for years. My place was about 20 minutes outside town. Small apartment over a mechanic's shop I helped a buddy build out last spring. Nothing fancy, but clean, safe, mine. I helped her up the stairs with the bag and got her settled on the futon couch. She was holding tight to her purse, still looking toward the door like he might knock it down. You don't have to go back, I said. Not unless you decide to? She gave me a faint smile. He's gonna be furious. Let him be. He's got no right to keep you trapped out there. I pulled out my phone and called the estate lawyer again. This time, I didn't wait for a call back. I told the receptionist it was urgent and got an appointment for 9 a.m. sharp. Then I called APS and made it official. I gave them the case number Mia started, uploaded the statement, the texts, the bruising photos, and noted the will clause. Any history of hospital visits or reports? The agent asked. None she ever filed, I said. But he's been pushing her to sign over the ranch. I've got proof. We'll assign a field officer by morning. After dinner, 2 bowls of leftover chili and some cornbread I had frozen. Trudy sat by the window with her tea, watching traffic like she'd never seen it before. She broke the silence without looking at me. My daddy would be sick over this. I leaned on the counter across from her. What do you think he'd say? He'd say Rick was always impatient, always loud. Said the land made people think they were owed something. She laughed once, bitter. But I never thought he'd go this far. Not Rick. Not my brother. She looked down into her mug. After Dad died, I thought Rick just needed purpose. So I let him run the hay contracts, deal with the feed guys. Thought it'd make him feel important. You gave him the keys and he started building his own damn house, I said. She nodded. I let it go on too long. I kept thinking if I just kept peace, kept the ranch running, maybe he'd settle down. But he didn't. No, she said. He got bolder. Meaner. Started telling folks he built that ranch. Started introducing me as just the caretaker. Like I was the help. I sat down across from her. You stayed because you loved the place. He stayed because he thought it made him a man. She looked at me hard. You ever notice how folks only talk about what Rick did for the land, not what he took from it? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. We sat like that for a while, quiet but not uncomfortable. Like something had shifted. The silence didn't feel like defeat anymore. It felt like armor. Before bed, I set up the pull-out couch and gave her the spare quilt from my closet. She folded her hands on top of it like it was gold. You did good, Dylan, she said softly. Tomorrow, I told her, we finish this. First thing that morning, I opened my laptop and started pulling everything together. I'd already dumped most of the files into Mia's shared drive, but I wanted it airtight. No excuses, no gaps. I started a fresh folder. named it Trudy Protection Case, dragged in the photos of the bruises, her written statement, the screenshots of Rick's texts, added my own report, times, dates, observations. I included my Army credentials, a copy of my active reserve ID, and a signed witness statement just in case they needed it in court. Then I scanned the will clause Brent from the law office confirmed, highlighted the no contest section, and added a sticky note with Rick challenges equals Rick forfeits. Period. Last thing I included was the draft property transfer. I circled the date, added a note pointing out the handwriting that matched his sticky notes. It was clear as day. He'd been preparing to push this through whether she wanted it or not. Once the packet was clean, I sent separate emails to APS, Officer Benally, and the estate lawyer, each with secure access to the folder. I texted Mia to double-check it synced on her end. Dealin'. Everything's in the shared drive. It's go time. MIA. We're reviewing now. Looks solid. You planning to be on site when it happens? Dealin'. Oh yeah, I got on the phone with Benally. Tonight's the best shot, I told him. Rick's throwing a bonfire party, his big retirement send-off. Place'll be packed, music loud, nobody paying attention until it's too late. You sure you want to be there for it? I'm not missing it. I want him to look Trudy in the face when it goes down. He paused, then said, All right, I'll coordinate with dispatch. 2 cruisers, unmarked. A PS will ride along. Make it 11:30 p.m. Sharp, copy that. I turned to Trudy, who'd been sitting by the window again, holding her tea like it was a lifeline. You okay riding with me? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she nodded slowly. I want to see it, but if he starts yelling, I cut her off. He can bark all he wants. No one's listening anymore. She exhaled, shaky but steady. Don't let him talk his way out of this. I looked her dead in the eye. He won't. Not this time. The rest of the day moved slow. We stayed inside. I helped her rehearse what she wanted to say if APS asked more questions. I reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. I could still see the fear on her face, but it wasn't running the show anymore. At 7, I loaded my truck with water, a flashlight, a backup charger for my phone. I laid the paperwork packet on the dashboard in a manila envelope, just in case someone on site needed hard copies. Trudy came out wearing her old denim jacket from the ranch, same one she always wore to feed the chickens at sunrise. It was thin and faded, but something about it made her look grounded, like she hadn't lost everything yet. We sat in the truck outside my place for a while, engine off, just waiting for the clock to crawl. At 10:15, my phone lit up. Benally. Rolling out. ETA 11:25. MIT. APS agent confirmed. Name's Rachel. She's solid. I put the truck in gear. Let's end this. Trudy didn't speak the whole drive, just stared out the window, hands folded tight in her lap. But when the ranch lights came into view down the long dirt road, she sat up straighter. You could already hear the music from halfway down the driveway. Same country playlist, same crowd of cousins and neighbors cheering around the fire pit. Lanterns strung along the fence line. Beer coolers everywhere. Rick always loved to play King of the Hill. Tonight he was about to get knocked off the throne. I killed the headlights and parked just off the gravel road, tucked behind a clump of mesquite. The ranch sat lit up ahead like a carnival. Bonfire blazing, voices loud and slurred, someone shouting over the music about good old days. I looked over at Trudy. Her fingers were clenched tight in her lap, but her chin was high. She didn't ask me if we were doing the right thing. She already knew. At 11:32 p.m. Sharp, the cruisers rolled in, slow and clean. No sirens, just a wash of red and blue lights sweeping across the pasture like a spotlight cutting through someone's lie. The music stopped, just cut out mid-song. Rick stood near the fire pit, holding a solo cup, arm around a cousin who looked 3 drinks past done. His eyes caught the lights first, then the badges. Officer Benally stepped out of the first cruiser. Richard McCall. Rick raised his cup like it was a joke. That's me, officer. What's this about? Somebody drink and drive again? Benally didn't crack a smile. Step away from the fire, sir. Rick's grin faltered, just a flicker. What the hell's going on? I stepped out from the dark, Trudy just behind me. The moment Rick saw her, his whole face dropped. Trudy? He barked. You serious with this? She didn't answer, just stood there, eyes locked on him, steady. A PS agent Rachel came around the back of the cruiser, clipboard in hand, badge clipped to her jacket. Mr. McCall, we've received a formal elder abuse report regarding coercion, manipulation of property assets, and physical intimidation against Ms. Trudy McCall. Rick's head whipped toward me. You've got to be kidding me. Agent Rachel didn't pause. We've reviewed photographic evidence, a signed witness statement, digital messages, and a draft transfer document allegedly prepared under duress. He scoffed. It was just a damn draft. She was going to sign it anyway. Benally stepped forward. Rick, turn around. What? You're under arrest for attempted elder fraud and coercion. Rick stood there frozen for a second, jaw slack, like he couldn't compute what just came out of Benally's mouth. Then he exploded. You set me up, he shouted, locking eyes with me. You brought this into our house? My own niece? I didn't say a word. Just stood next to Trudy, arms crossed, watching him lose the only thing he ever actually wanted, control. You don't get it, he yelled, turning toward the crowd. This ranch is mine. I put in the work. She just lived here. She didn't do half what I... Benally didn't let it go on. He grabbed Rick's arm and cuffed him with a smooth, practiced snap. Rick didn't fight, didn't resist. He just stared straight ahead like the fire was burning a hole through his skull. The whole backyard went dead silent. A couple people backed away from the fire pit. One of the teenagers pulled out their phone and started recording. I didn't stop them. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Another voice answered, "Think it's something with the land." Heard he's been pushing her to sign it over. Benally read Rick his rights as they walked him toward the cruiser. Rick didn't say another word. Trudy stayed still until the door shut behind him. Then she breathed. Not heavy, not dramatic. Just finally. Agent Rachel came over, soft-spoken but firm. We'll be following up with you both in the morning. He'll be held overnight and arraigned tomorrow. Restraining orders will be processed first thing. Thank you, I said. You were fast. She looked at Trudy. You did the hard part. Trudy nodded once, still staring at the now empty spot where Rick had been standing. I'll grab your statements after you get some rest, Benally said, coming back around. We'll keep him off your back from here. I gave him a quick nod, then guided Trudy back to the truck. The party crowd still hadn't moved much. Some people were whispering, others just staring at the cruiser taillights vanishing down the road. Cousin Eric made eye contact with me, opened his mouth to speak, then looked away. Too late for second thoughts. We got in the truck, closed the doors, and pulled out slow gravel crunching under the tires. Trudy didn't say a thing the whole ride back, but her hands? They weren't shaking anymore. We pulled into the law office lot just before 8, sun barely up, dew still on the windshield. Trudy sat beside me in the passenger seat, purse on her lap, hands folded tight. She hadn't spoken much since we left the ranch the night before, but now she looked calm, like the silence was finally hers. Brent, the paralegal, greeted us in the lobby and led us into a small glass-walled conference room. A fresh pot of coffee sat in the corner, untouched. You're right on time, he said, setting a thick folder on the table. Let's get started. The estate lawyer, Don Ridley, came in 5 minutes later. Gray suit, tan face, steady voice. Morning, he said, nodding to both of us. I've reviewed the arrest report and the documents you sent. Based on the terms of the will, Rick's arrest officially activates the no contest clause. Trudy sat up straighter. So that means... It means if he challenges the estate now, he loses his share entirely. No negotiation, no partials, no legal workaround. Your father's clause holds. I nodded. Good. What do we need to do next? We've drafted updated directives, Ridley said, opening the folder. Trudy, this gives Dylan co-executor authority. From here, any major financial or legal action tied to the estate requires both your signatures. She looked over the document, then picked up the pen without hesitation. Signed clean and clear. Next came the trust papers. I've also drawn up a protective trust for the ranch and the house, Ridley said. If signed, the property gets legally removed from Rick's potential reach, even if he finds a way to stir up trouble. The assets are locked under this trust with you as primary trustee and Dylan as successor. Trudy took a breath, then signed again. No pause, no second guessing. I pulled out my phone right after and called the El Paso County Clerk's office. I need to flag a deed, I said. Fraud risk, active case, property under protection by legal trust. I've got the paperwork and ID. They walked me through the flagging process. I submitted the forms while still in the meeting room, scanned from my phone. After that, we hit the bank. Trudy and I sat with the branch manager, walked through every linked account, every automatic draft, every security question. She changed passwords, added my contact. We requested real-time transaction alerts. froze any automatic transfers to Rick's name, and removed his login access from every profile he had. The manager pulled up one of the accounts Rick had used for feed orders. This one's been active for years. You still want it open? No, Trudy said firmly. Close it. Today, back at the law office for the last round of paperwork, Ridley looked up from his laptop. You've done everything right so far, he said. But just so you're prepared, Rick may fight this in public. Play victim? Try to turn cousins or neighbors against you. Let him, I said. We've got evidence. We've got the law. He's got nothing but a bruised ego. Ridley smiled slightly. That should hold up just fine. Trudy leaned back in her chair, hands finally resting easy in her lap. This is the first time, she said softly, that it feels like it's actually mine. Not just a legacy I've been babysitting. I looked at her, tired eyes, wrinkled hands, steady voice. You earned it, I said. Time everyone else figured that out. We stepped outside into the late morning sun. She paused on the sidewalk, took one long breath, and looked down the street like it stretched into something new. No more hiding, no more silence. Just a ranch, a name, and a woman finally ready to own both. We pulled into the courthouse lot just before 9. It was already hot enough to bake the pavement, and Trudy sat beside me in a plain navy blouse. No makeup, hair pulled back tight. Her mouth was set in a thin line. Not scared, just done. Inside, the courtroom smelled like old carpet and recycled air. Third row back, left side. We sat down and waited. Rick came in through the side door with 2 deputies behind him, wrists cuffed in front. Same damn shirt from the party, now wrinkled and sour-looking. He hadn't shaved. His hair stuck out in greasy tufts. He saw us right away, didn't blink, just stared like he could set us on fire if he looked hard enough. Trudy didn't flinch. The judge walked in. Everyone stood, sat. The bailiff read the case number. Then the district attorney stepped forward, file in hand. Your Honor, the state is bringing charges against Richard McCall for attempted exploitation of an elder, coercion, and physical intimidation related to property fraud. The victim, his sister, has submitted photographic evidence, text messages, and witness testimony. The judge flipped through the case file. And bail recommendation? No bail, Your Honor. The defendant has a long-standing relationship with the victim and access to community ties that present a risk for witness intimidation. Rick suddenly spoke up, voice sharp. That's garbage. I've lived in this county my whole life. My whole life. That ranch is my home. She's twisting this. The judge didn't even look at him. Sir, you'll get your turn. The DA kept going. We have digital communications clearly showing pressure, attempts to manipulate legal transfers, and physical evidence consistent with coercive behavior. The judge closed the folder. Mr. McCall, based on the charges and the material provided, I find sufficient cause to deny bail. You will remain in custody until your preliminary hearing. Rick turned to us, breathing hard, mouth twitching. You'll regret this, he hissed, voice low and sharp like a splinter in the dark. I stood up slowly, just looked him in the eye, solid. You're not scary anymore, I said. The bailiff tapped Rick's shoulder, guiding him toward the door. He didn't fight, just kept his eyes locked on us like he was trying to memorize the moment. When the door shut, the silence in the room dropped like a weight. A few people exhaled. The buzz of the overhead lights was the only sound. We walked out into the hallway. Trudy leaned against the wall for a second, then pushed herself off it with a steady breath. He always thought the ranch was his just because he worked the loudest, she said, like yelling was proof of ownership. We headed down to the records office. I'd already filled out most of the restraining order paperwork the night before, just needed her final signature. The clerk was quick, professional, no questions. Filed, stamped, done. From there, we stopped at the county credit union, closed the last checking account Rick ever had partial access to. Just a joint account with an old auto deposit for some fuel delivery service. Still, we weren't leaving any doors cracked open. Next up, the ranch's P.O. box. Trudy filed a change of address form right there at the counter. Everything official, everything sealed. She didn't speak much during the errands, but her steps were solid. Her voice was clear when she answered questions. I could feel the shift in her, like all the pieces Rick kept trying to scatter were locking back into place. Once we got back in the truck, I asked her, "You all right?" She nodded, watching a group of kids ride bikes past the courthouse lot. "I'm not mad," she said. "I thought I would be." I thought I'd be shaking or sick, but I'm not. What do you feel? Relieved. We pulled out of the lot and drove back toward my place, sun blazing off the hood, dust trailing behind us. The courthouse faded in the rearview mirror. Rick's face with it. What didn't fade? The feeling that finally, someone in this family had done the damn right thing. We moved Trudy into her new condo the next weekend. Quiet little building near the edge of town, one-story units, mostly retirees or empty nesters. No stairs, no livestock, no Rick. The place was small, just a living room, kitchen, and one bedroom, but clean and bright. The landlord let us paint, so we went with light yellow for the kitchen and a dusty blue for the bedroom. Trudy said it reminded her of her mama's farmhouse. I brought over the rocking chair from the ranch porch, sanded it down, restained it, set it by the window where the light came in strong in the mornings. We hung a few framed photos over the mantel, old ones of her and Grandpa, a couple with me and her at the fair when I was a kid, even one of the ranch back when it still had the white fence. She unfolded her old quilt and laid it across the foot of her bed like a crown. That first week, she barely sat still, joined the neighborhood gardening group, took charge of the seed rotation like she'd been doing it for years. She started writing again, too, handwritten recipes and little stories from when she was a girl. She'd leave them on the counter like newspaper clippings, just casually lying around. She smiled more, ate better, slept better. We got the call about Rick mid-Thursday. I answered, listened, nodded once, hung up. 20 months, I said. Convicted on all counts. Mandatory financial counseling. No contact orders locked in. Trudy was at the table shelling pecans. Her hands didn't stop moving. But her shoulders dropped just slightly, like someone had pulled a weight off without warning her first. Only 20? She asked. Could have been worse. But he won't touch your name, your land, or your accounts again. She stared out the window for a minute, then cracked another shell. Good enough. After the news broke, a few relatives reached out. One cousin called and said, "We had no idea it was that bad." Another texted, "Let us know if you need anything." An aunt stopped by with cookies and a nervous smile. I didn't entertain any of it. You knew. You just didn't act. You saw how she went quiet when Rick came around. You saw the way she gave ground and never got it back. You just let him talk over her year after year like her silence was agreement. Don't call it shock now. Call it guilt. I went to the bookstore that Saturday and picked out a simple leather journal. Dark green, lined pages, good paper. No fancy quote on the cover. Just blank space. Ready. I brought it to her while she was clipping basil on the balcony. Here, I said, handing it to her. She flipped it open, ran her fingers over the first page. What's this for? For your version, I said. Not the version he always told. She didn't answer right away. Just closed the cover, set it in her lap, and looked out across the street where a kid was riding his bike in loops around a cracked sidewalk. Then she nodded. Once, slow. She never owed anyone her story. But now at least, she had the space to write it her way. It was late September when we sat out on her balcony. Warm breeze, sky soft with that end-of-summer haze. Trudy was snipping basil from her planter box, placing each stem into a little glass cup like they were worth more than money. The whole place smelled like sun and green things. Clean, hopeful, like nothing rotten had touched it. She didn't look up when she asked, "Do you ever miss him?" I sat back in the patio chair, arms crossed. I miss who he pretended to be, I said, not who he became. She nodded once, slow. The scissors clicked. We sat quiet for a few beats. Someone down the block was playing an old Willie Nelson song through half-broken speakers. He always talked about legacy, she said finally, like it was something he could claim by shouting the loudest. Yeah, I said, but legacy isn't just what you leave behind. It's what you stop from spreading. She smiled a little at that. You think we stopped it? I looked around. At her herb planters, the little rocking chair in the corner, the wind chimes she hung herself. Yeah, I said. And clean. She set the basil down and wiped her hands on her jeans. You think the court stuff helped anybody else? I think it helped you, I said, and it made me believe that sometimes the right thing actually gets done. Quietly, precisely, one line at a time. She didn't answer, but I saw her lips twitch, half smile, half something else. I stood up, stretched my back. I've got to get going. You need anything? No, she said. I've got writing to do. As I walked back inside, I glanced at the table by the door. The green journal sat open, pen resting across the top. I looked down at the first line. This is how you take your name back. That was all I needed to see.